Alright, this is Vegeta8259 again, and this is part 3 of my work in progress for my summer Tallgeese project. And in this part we're going to be going over the construction of the 1:100 scale Leo. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be making the Leo out of a 1:100 scale Tallgeese 3. So, first off, we're going to have to assess which parts we're going to need and which ones we aren't. And I've already gone through. We're going to be using most of the runners, except for one. There's actually one runner which we're not even going to be using at all, so we can go ahead and put that one to the side. And obviously things like the big thruster pods on the backpack aren't going to be used, and some other things are going to be trimmed off. So let's get this guy assembled and see what he's going to look like before modification. So after getting the kit snapped together, excluding the parts I'm not going to be using, this is what I'm going to be left with. As you can see, I've used the Tallgeese 1 head. I think that's what I'm going to use as the base for Leo's head. Obviously left off the face mask, left off the shoulder armor. I've got the Kotobukiya hand, so I didn't bother assembling the high-grade hands. The chest vents are going to be removed. There's no side skirts on the Leo. And I think that's, and the back skirts are omitted as well. I'm going to have to scratch build new back skirts. And as you can see, I've got quite a few parts left over. And those will probably just go in my big box of leftover gunpla parts. I am going to be using the shield and the Dabra gun. You'll see that in just a second when I show you the look I'm going for. And the beam sabers, of course. And Tallgeese 3's shoulder armor, or at least a portion of it, I was kind of hoping I could use this as the shoulder armor for Leo, but I'm afraid it's going to be a little bit too big. I might just have to scratch build some shoulder armor for Leo. So we'll see when we get around to doing that part. Now, as I do on pretty much all of my kits, I'm going to start at the feet and work my way up. So, luckily this part of the foot won't have to be modified at all. We can just leave that as it is. But this piece that goes on right there is going to have to be modified. And basically, what I'm going to do is just take a pencil and mark out some lines where we're going to have to cut away. And we just take plastic nippers, cut that, and that'll be thin enough I can just break that piece off. So we've got a separation there, here, and here. So we've removed that thingy right there. And basically, we'll have that on there, and we'll have this on this side. And what we need is for this to be flat right there, and then to fill in that hole right there, so that this little center part just comes up and has a little indentation right there, rather than this side piece coming all the way up like so. As you can see, I've kind of already started doing that on this one right here. And after all the plot plating and cementing and puttying and sanding is done, I'm going to end up with something that looks a bit like this. And after, it's got a nice coat of primer on there. And here's just a comparison to the original Tallgeese foot, so you can see how the shape is different now. And I actually went back and changed the shape of the foot even more. Here's the foot you just saw, and then I went back and changed this top part. As you can see, I flattened it out a little bit more, and then shortened this part right here so it doesn't come out quite as far. Just made that a little bit more accurate to the Leo's line art. And actually, this is going to be able to fit into the ankle area and give it a bit more mobility, on top of being more accurate. So I think this is a bit better than this foot that I settled with originally. Alright, now that the feet are done, the next order of business, working our way up, is going to be the lower legs. Now for these, the ankle armor, or what little ankle armor there is going to have to be modified, and then this front section of the knee armor is also going to have to be modified. Now what I plan to do for the ankle armor, up here I've got a little printout of the Leo, just so I can have a continuous reference. Let's see, as you can see, the ankle armor on the Leo is a bit larger than on the Tallgeese. So what I'm going to do is use some epoxy putty and simply put it on there and then sculpt it into the correct shape as seen on the line art here. And after applying the epoxy putty, you're going to get, well, you're going to get something that looks kind of like this. I know it looks really incorrect right now, but I added some excess putty because I knew I was going to be carving away and sanding this down, so I made it a little bit bigger than I needed to, and then after all the carving and sanding, hopefully we can make it end up in the correct shape. Alright, now that all of the sanding and puttying and finishing is all done with the ankle armor, I think this is what we're going to end up with. And basically all I've done since the last segment was go in and scribe a panel line on the front of the ankle armor, just to mimic the panel line that's on the front of the line art. And yeah, I know there's supposed to be a panel line on the back of the ankle armor, but I just didn't do that. So anyway, ankle armor's done, feet are done. Now we got to move on to this knee armor. Basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting along this line right here. This back half we can keep, but all of this front is going to have to go. So basically just going to be cutting along that line and then cutting along this line right here. And once we do that, we'll end up with something that looks kind of like this. Now from here, we're going to be taking some ply plate and basically just making 3 segments that'll make up the Leo's knee armor. And it's geometrically pretty simple. It's basically just 3 faces, and then I'll just have to sand it down to the correct size and shape, and then I'll put some little rivet looking things in there in the front of the knee. And after cementing this ply plate in place, as you can see, we basically just got 2 small parts on each side and 1 large square piece of ply plate in the center. I've put some putty in here behind it just to kind of reinforce that and make it a little bit more stable. And so now all we've got to do is just sand it in place and bevel the edges and just make it look nice. And then after sanding it, this is pretty much how it's going to turn out. I took a drill bit and simply drilled 4 holes in there, and then just cut off some pieces from a runner from another model kit, and then just glued those in there and then cut them off and sanded them down smooth to make the little rivets that are on the knee armor. And I think that's pretty much how the lower leg is going to end up. Now moving on to Leo's thighs, what we're going to do with these is, as you can see, there's a big hole here. That's where the side skirt's attached for the Tallgeese. And basically, Leo's design has got, that hole's not there because Leo doesn't have any side skirts. And it's just got 2 little squarish details on there. So what I'm going to do is take some ply plate and fill in that hole really quick. Just put that in there with cement. And then once that dries, I'll sand all of this down smooth. Alright, and after filling in those panel lines with putty and sanding over that piece of ply plate I used to plug up that hole, I've gone in with my little panel line scriber and simply just scribed the details on the side of the leg there. Basically, you've just got a panel line running down the center and then 2 squarish little details right there. And then on the other side is just a straight panel line. Alright, and after getting everything primed and sanded, this is what the leg is going to end up looking like. You got your Leo knee armor there, and got these nice little details scribed on the side of the thigh. And I think those turned out nicer than I thought they were. I was afraid that scribing on top of some of that stuff where I'd filled in the panel lines and covered up that big hole might have been ended up a bit messy, but it turned out a little bit cleaner than I thought it would. So yeah, that's the leg. Now luckily the waist section didn't really need too much work. I just added a couple pieces of ply plate here on the side to add a little bit extra detail, plus to cover up that big hollow area that was right there. And Leo does have different back skirts than the Tallgeese, but looking at it, I noticed that the back skirts are basically this exact same shape right here that's on the front crotch piece, only there's two of them instead of just one. And I took my old 1:100 scale Tallgeese that I made like 5 years ago, and basically just clipped that front piece off, and basically just, took those side parts off, and I've got a little thruster here, and I'm going to put that in there, and it's got a peg in it, and then just fit it into one of those holes, like so, and that'll be really nice for one of the back skirts. However, I only have one of these. I needed another one. Now I could have cast one in resin, but I didn't have access to silicone to make a mold, so I basically just took ply plate and made a copy of it. So here it is. Here's the original right here, and here's the copy I made from ply plate. I simply took a little bit of ink and filled in the panel lines so you could see them. And I think I made a halfway decent copy. It's not a perfect copy, but I think it's close enough that I'm satisfied with it. So now I've got two back skirts, so I think this is going to work out nicely. Alright, now on to the torso. Now luckily, we're not going to have to change too much about the torso. The lower half of the torso is pretty much the same, the back is pretty much the same. The only real difference is that these chest vents right here are going to have to be removed. So I'm just going to cut those off and then fill in the gap with putty. And here is what the chest ends up looking like after cutting off the chest vents and filling those holes in with putty. As you can see, it's really starting to look more like a Leo now. And I put a little bit of ply plate up here just to fill in that little detail. And then we can take the lower torso, and when I do final assembly, I'll just glue that in place. So it's starting to shape up finally. Now for the head, we're actually going to have to do quite a bit of work. I'm going to start with the Tallgeese 1 head, namely because I need these little striped shaped things on the side of the head. I'm going to need those for Leo. But basically, I've left the poly cap in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that down onto the torso, and I'm going to have to widen this area right here. You've got a little square camera right there, but I'm not going to be using that. And basically I'm going to have to cut and sand this head down until it's the shape I want it. It's a little bit too big and a little bit too round. I'm going to square it off slightly and then just kind of sand it down. And then I'm actually going to, once I get this in here, I'm going to fill in this neckline with putty and then sand it down smooth, because, I mean, yeah, that's going to give him no neck articulation whatsoever, but I went back and watched Gundam Wing, and I can't really find any instance of a Leo's head turning. I believe the head was permanently fixed to the shoulders, and I believe most of the Oz mobile suits were like that, with the exception of Mercurius, V8, and Virgo. And so that's what I'm going to go with. I'm just going to have the head in a fixed position, and it's not going to be able to turn. And again, yeah, that's taking away articulation, but I think it's going to be more accurate to the show that way. Alright, and here is what I've done to the head before applying any putty to it at all. As you can see, I've cut off the top of the head to make it kind of flat, and cut off the vents on the front of the face. And I went in and sanded that little camera area down in there kind of flat, because I've actually got a little thing I'm going to use for the camera lens. Alright, so I've taken the same epoxy putty that I used to fill in these chest vents here and make the ankle armor, and I've just put it around, I guess, the neck area, or I guess now it's a lack thereof, and just put it around there. And after this cures overnight, I'm going to go back and sand that nice and smooth so that the head just kind of fades into this collar area. I also added some putty up here on the top, so I can fill in that hole that was up there, and I'll just sand that smooth and round the head up nicely, and hopefully end up with something that looks a little bit like a Leo head. And after a bit of sanding and a coat of primer, this is what the head is going to end up looking like. And at first I was afraid it was going to look kind of bad, but I think it actually turned out looking halfway decent. I've noticed a few little places like here and down inside the face area I'm going to have to go in with a little bit more putty and fix some little imperfections, but overall I think this is going to work pretty nicely. I simply made this little visor part right here out of pla plate, so that was quick and simple. But overall I think this is going to work nicely. And luckily the lower torso doesn't need any modifications at all, so we can just snap that together like so, and we're ready to go. Now for the yellow camera that's going to be used on Leo's head, I wanted to use like a little clear jewel thing. So I went to the craft store and I looked all over for the size and shape and color that I need, and I absolutely could not find the exact thing I needed. So what I ended up doing was I bought a little pack of acrylic jewels like this, and I got this yellow one. As you can see, it's very large and round and faceted. And basically what I did is I took to this and sanded and sanded and sanded and sanded until I couldn't sand anymore, and cut it down to the right size and shape. And this is what I ended up with. A small yellow square clear jewel. And I started out with a rough grit sandpaper and then worked down to a finer grit, and then after it was done I sprayed it with a clear gloss top coat, so that gave it its shine back after the sanding. And I think it's actually going to work out pretty nicely. Put it in there, push it in, and I think that's actually going to look pretty good. Now, I'm not going to really go over the modifications I did to Leo's arms, because the arms are pretty much exactly the same as the Tallgeese. So you can go back and watch the second work in progress video to see how I did all these arm and elbow modifications, because this video is going to be long enough as it is. But the shoulder armor is different, and what I did was I took Tallgeese 3's shoulder armor, popped this thing off, and this is what I used. And I pretty much just cut it down into the size and shape I needed until I had something that looked about like this. And I see these little circular things right here on the inside. I cut those out and glued them to the inside of that outer piece so that there'd be something to grip onto the shoulder joint. And then just took thin layers of pla plate and layered those on the outside and cut a little rectangular shape right there, and then I'll just have to go in and sand the edges of this. And after getting a nice coat of primer, this is how the shoulder armor is going to end up looking. And it can go up and down, and pretty simple actually, but I think it looks pretty good. Now for Leo's machine gun, basically I'm just doing a combination of scratch building and just cobbling together parts from other model kits. The main cylinder for the machine gun here I've taken from the beam cannons that used to be on my Master Grade XS gun before I got the conversion kit. And then, like the handles from the Tallgeese 3, some metal parts for the barrel here, the little ammo drum I made out of a brass pipe and just put some pla plate on the ends, the scopes from an old high grade. This thing came from my old Tallgeese. And basically I'm just going to put all this together, and I got some little, going to drill some holes in the barrel there, and hopefully it'll end up looking pretty nice. And this is what the machine gun is going to look like after everything's been put together. Alright, and for the shield and Dabra gun mount, I've basically just built them out of pla plate. The shield mount, I took these two side pieces from the Tallgeese 3 kit and then just made this little box out of pla plate, put a polycap in there, and it can swing up and down, and the shield just pegs right into it. I think that's actually going to work out pretty well. And likewise for the Dabra gun mount, I just made this out of ply plate and then put a little brass rod there to connect the Dabra gun to it. And that's pretty much it. I got to do a little bit of cleaning up on this, but it's pretty much done at this point. And here's just a quick look at the shield mount, the machine gun, and the Dabra gun mount after getting a nice coat of primer. And for those of you who are still watching this long video, I sincerely appreciate it. And after about a month of work, this is the final result. Well, the final result before painting anyway. But the Leo is finally finished. And I have to say I am pretty happy with the way it turned out. I got all the weapons, the Dabra gun, machine gun, beam saber, shield, extra hands, and I think that all of my hard work has paid off a little bit. So I guess with that, this completes the building phase of my Tallgeese project, which is going on much longer than I originally intended it to. And now I can start painting, and I can assure you that won't take nearly as long as building the kits. And I'm thinking it'll probably take me a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks to get all 4 kits painted and panel lined and decaled and all that. I'm still waiting on my decals from Samuel Decal. They're in the mail, they're on the way. So hopefully they should get here before I finish painting the kits. But anyway, I guess that about does it for this video. Here's a quick comparison of how we started out with this and ended up with this. So anyway, for those of you who might be wondering, yes, I did buy the Master Grade Delta Plus, and it should be arriving in the mail any day now, actually, and that is going to be my next project after I finish painting the Tallgeese project. So you guys can look forward to that. So that about does it for this video, and with that I'll see you guys at part 4, which will be basically just me painting these 4 model kits. So look forward to that, and I'll see you guys next time.